Peace be upon you. On December 2nd, 1991, fair and free elections were held in an Arab country to find out whether people wanted to extend the rule of His Excellency. Of course, there were no competing candidates. The voters were limited to two choices: agree or disagree to renew the term of His Excellency. His Excellency won the elections by a whopping 99.99% percentage. Likewise, and with the same level of credibility, we hear that 97%, 98%, and 99% of Western scientists support the theory of evolution, the claim of various pro-myth scientific websites and regurgitated by others.
Why do 98% or 99% of the world's scientists, biologists, and others, chemists, physicists, astronomers, why do they accept this theory and are absolutely convinced of it?
A statistical analysis conducted in 1995 concluded that about 99.85%, almost 100% minus a minute amount, 99.85% of U.S. geologists and biologists support the theory of evolution.
As you can see, these percentages are regurgitated by some as proof of the validity of the theory. The assumption is that, as long as the Western scientific community, characterized by absolute freedom, scientific integrity, and impartiality, is almost entirely convinced of the theory, then it must be correct. Let us reveal some documented facts that will shock you and completely reverse your view of this rosy picture. Afterwards, I will share my personal experience with this freedom of speech when it comes to views on evolution at the American university where I studied. Let us start with documentary Expelled, in which the U.S. lawyer Ben Stein conducts a number of interviews with professors and researchers who were expelled from their jobs and denied funding for scientific research, simply because they questioned the validity of the theory of evolution. Will we take everything claimed in this movie for granted? Of course not. Instead, we followed the stories in the documentary and the responses from evolutionists to get a complete picture. You'll hear the term intelligent design repeated throughout the documentary. It means that the universe and life did not originate by chance, randomness, or blind selection. Rather, they must have been designed. Dr. Richard von Sternberg, an evolutionary biologist who was the editor of a scientific journal affiliated with the Smithsonian Museum of Natural History, published an article written by Dr. Stephen C. Meyer proposing that intelligent design may be the explanation for the origin of life. The chair of his department described him as an intellectual terrorist for giving some credibility to intelligent design.
The way the chair of the department put it is that I was viewed as an intellectual terrorist.
Terrorist.
Because of giving the topic of intelligent design some modicum of credibility.
Dr. Sternberg lost his office. His religious and political beliefs were investigated, and he was pressured to resign. Or, according to the Myth disciples, his contract as a research associate at the Institute was not renewed.
As a result, Dr. Sternberg lost his office, his political and religious beliefs were investigated, and he was pressured to resign.
His scientific career was effectively ended, and his publication stopped because he dared to publish an article that offended the holiness of His Excellency, the myth. Dr. Carolyn Crocker, an immunopharmacology specialist at George Mason University, mentioned intelligent design in her cell biology class. So the department head summoned her and told her that she would be disciplined. At the end of the term, she lost her job. She tried to find a job elsewhere, but found herself blacklisted by the pro-evolution lobby and its vast network, and no one hired her. The Myth disciples say, "Oh, but she did find a position at a community college." I am not going to recount the life story for each of these examples. It is enough to know that her academic reputation was tarnished because she opposed the myth. Neurosurgeon and academic professor Dr. Michael Egnor dared to write in one of his articles, "Doctors don't need to know evolution," in response to an article published by the Myth disciples. The Darwinian lobby attacked him, and practiced intellectual terrorism, using foul language against him. The university was flooded with calls demanding the removal of Dr. Egnor.
I realized when I kind of went public with my doubts about the adequacy of Darwin's theory, that I would encounter criticism. What has amazed me is the viciousness and the sort of baseness of it.
Of course, dear viewers, this is not limited to the fields of biology and medicine. If you dare say that chance cannot explain a phenomenon, you will face the threat of expulsion. Robert J. Marks II is a professor of electrical engineering at Baylor University. When the university discovered that his research was related to his belief in intelligent design, they forced him to return the grant money award for his research project, and his page on the university website was shut down to prevent him from seeking research funds from any other institution.
So the fact that this was singled out, let alone shut down, is jaw-dropping. It's astonishing. I have never been treated like this in my about 30 years in academia.
The astronomer Dr. Guillermo Gonzalez used to work at the University of Iowa. As a distinguished professional, he published his work in major journals such as Nature, Science, Scientific American also published his work. He wrote a book titled The Privileged Planet, where he dared to mention that Earth was meticulously and purposely designed. Consequently, in 2005, he was expelled from Iowa State University. He gave the following advice to anyone who might dare to say that the universe came by design and intent.
If they value their careers, they should keep quiet about their intelligent design views.
He was expelled from his job and denied research grants for 8 years. No university dared hire him until he was finally accepted at Ball State University, to the fury of the Darwinian lobby. So Dr. Gonzalez pledged not to teach intelligent design in his classes, and the university pledged to monitor Gonzalez to ensure that he would not bring up the topic of intelligent design again, according to science. The guy has repented, people. He will never again say that the universe came by intent, and he will never oppose the view that the universe originated through a series of blind coincidences with no purpose, intent, or agency. So please, give him a chance. After all this, it is not surprising that many scientists refuse to show their faces in the documentary, expelled for fear of losing their jobs.
It's the kind of thing where you just learn to keep your mouth shut.
In addition to those scientists who were willing to appear on camera, we encountered many more who didn't dare show their face for fear of losing their jobs.
Here are excerpts from the documentary. Expelled, no intelligence allowed. Don't be smart. You have to bow to His Excellency. The holy myth. Never hint that the universe is created with purpose and intent, not even under your breath. Because if you do, you'll face expulsion. See the doors to other universities shut in your face, the funding for your research terminated, and your promotions frozen. You will be attacked, mocked, and described as an intellectual terrorist. These are the myth's inquisitions, reminiscent of the Church's inquisitions in the Middle Ages. A point to ponder. Chemists know that more than 90 natural elements have been discovered to date, with neutrons and protons arranged in precisely sized nuclei, which attract electrons into orbits with proper distancing, and that these elements interact according to precise chemical laws, producing compounds that make up the bodies of organisms. Knowing all this, how can chemists believe the nonsense of evolution? Let's hear the answer from Professor James Tour of Rice University, as he talks about intellectual freedom in expressing views on evolution. Professor James Tour is a professor of chemistry, nanoengineering, and computer science. He was ranked among the top 10 chemists in the world by Thomson Reuters for his very distinguished achievements, more than 650 published papers, and more than 120 patents.
If anybody should be able to understand evolution, it is me. Because I make molecules for a living. I don't understand evolution. And I will confess that to you. Is it okay for me to say that I don't understand this? Is that all right? I know that there's a lot of people out there that don't understand anything about organic synthesis, but they understand evolution. I understand a lot about making molecules. I don't understand evolution. And you would say that, wow, I must be really unusual. But about 7 or 8 years ago, I posted on my website that I don't understand. And I said, I will buy lunch for anyone that will sit with me and explain to me evolution, and I won't argue with you until I don't understand something. I will ask you to clarify. But you can't wave by and say, this enzyme does that. You got to get down in the details of where molecules are built for me. Nobody has come forth. The Society contacted me. They said that they will buy the lunch, and they challenged the Atheist Society, go down to Houston, have lunch with this guy, and talk to him. Nobody's come.
So, according to Dr. Tour, only those who do not understand organic synthesis can understand evolution, meaning it is easier to fool them with statements such as atoms gathered and formed amino acids by chance, or genetic material components came together by chance. While Dr. Tour tells us that because he knows a lot about organic synthesis, he cannot understand evolution. He seems to be saying that if you truly understand chemistry, you'll find evolution ludicrous. If that's the case, why don't scientists, experts in their field, reject it? Tour tells us,
let me tell you what goes on in the back rooms of science. With National Academy members, with Nobel Prize winners, I have sat with them, and when I get them alone, not in public, because it's a scary thing if you say what I just said. And I say, do you understand all of this, where all of this came from and how this happens? Every time that I have sat with people who are synthetic chemists who understand this, they go, nope. I have sat with National Academy members and Nobel Prize winners. Sometimes I will say, do you understand this? And if they're afraid to say yes, they say nothing. They just stare at me because they can't sincerely do it. I was once brought in by the dean of the department once, and many years ago, and he was a chemist, and he was kind of concerned about some things. I said, let me ask you something. You're a chemist. Do you understand this? How do you get DNA without a cell membrane? And how do you get a cell membrane without a DNA? And how does all this come together from this? He said, Jim, we have no idea. We have no idea. I said, isn't it interesting that you, the dean of science, and I, the chemistry professor, can talk about this quietly in your office? But we can't go out there and talk about this.
A renowned professor of his caliber exchanges whispers with leading chemists who are afraid of declaring publicly that they doubt the myth of evolution. We talked about the terrorism practiced against those who oppose the myth of evolution, including biologists, astronomers, engineers, and chemists. But what about geologists? Michael Cremo, a geologist, describes the cases of terrorism and expulsion from jobs among researchers who made geological discoveries that contradict the scenarios and assumptions of the evolution myth. Dr. Virginia Steen McIntyre is an example. She published findings that fully contradict the myth of evolution and support the findings of many previous researchers. She was fiercely attacked by the myth proponents and expelled from her university. She wrote to the editor of the Quaternary Research Journal, complaining about this mindless attack from those who reject any findings that oppose their Darwinian creed. More such examples are provided in this video from the Muslim researchers, titled, Michael Cremo exposes the falsification in estimating the age of living organisms and humans. Law professor Philip E. Johnson, an ex-atheist and ex-myth disciple who later became a believer in creation, addresses the question, why don't the majority of scientists voice their rejection of the theory of evolution?
Why more scientists don't reject it. One is that if they did, they would lose all of their prestige within science. They would never get another research grant. And if they didn't have academic tenure, they'd get fired. There is a system of thought control over this, which is extremely rigid. It's worth your profession.
Well, if this is the case in universities, what about schools? Don't students in the U.S. learn freedom of thought and that they have the right to question every idea and every belief? Let us see. The state of Louisiana legislated that school students be taught two explanations for life, the theory of evolution and creation. However, in 1987, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that the Louisiana law was unconstitutional as the Constitution guarantees the freedom of belief, i.e., they considered the myth of evolution science, while creation is religion, which should not be taught in schools. So, the myth opponents removed the word creation and came up with the term intelligent design. and the students were encouraged to think for themselves. Did this universe and life come by blind chances, or did they require a knowledgeable originator, regardless of who this originator is, what we call him, and whether we should worship him? Let's see the reaction from the U.S. courts. The movie, Judgment Day, Intelligent Design on Trial. Produced by the Myth Disciples, explains what happened in Dover, Pennsylvania. The school board, elected by the parents, decided to add a book to the curriculum to present an alternative point of view, i.e., that the universe and life did not originate by chance, so that students could learn through their curricula that the theory of evolution is not an absolute truth, that it has flaws. Some teachers and parents were so enraged that they filed a court case against the school board. Yes, they went to court. Judge John E. Jones III was appointed to the case. The trial took place over months, with the American public watching closely, as this was a war between supporters and opponents of the myth, and the outcome would decide what schools could or could not do. On December 20th, 2005, Jones issued his prolonged verdict, which reads, "As stated, our conclusion today is that it is unconstitutional to teach ID as an alternative to evolution in a public school classroom." In an interview, he justified his position by saying,
garbage in, garbage out.
Meaning, if you teach students garbage, you will get garbage out of them. The judge also ordered over $1 million to be paid to the plaintiffs and their attorneys for damages caused by those who tried to teach intelligent design. Keep in mind that the school board wasn't appointed by anyone, but elected by the parents themselves. Following the verdict, the American magazine Time named Judge Jones one of 100 most influential people of the year.
In the wake of the trial, Time magazine named Judge Jones one of the 100 most influential people of the year.
Some might say, is everything a conspiracy theory to you? Call it conspiracy or non-conspiracy, whatever you want. When a complete system, a lobby, hastens to crush anyone who opposes Darwinism and to honor and reward anyone who supports it, our question becomes, is this a free environment? Or it is a similar environment to that where His Excellency wins 99.99% of the votes. In the same documentary about this story, they talk about an incident where a pro-myth mural brought in by a student was burned, how it was ripped off the wall and burned by anonymous arsonists. Just like the reports we hear about a picture of His Excellency, the President, being burned or taken down. After this, you can imagine how many times a teacher will hesitate before even hinting, a mere hint, that the universe and life have a creator. If a mere hint that the concept of chance and randomness is flawed and that this universe came by intelligent design can lead to the dissolution of a school board, treating its members as suspects and subjecting them to hefty penalties, you can imagine what would happen if terms like creation or creator are used. Likewise, in Britain, where free schools were forced to teach the evolution myth. This is the free environment in Western schools. You can imagine the result when children are taught in schools that His Excellency the President is the cause of all good that exists or might exist, and if generations are raised on that, some smart guy would then say, there is no doubt that His Excellency the President is right since 99% of the people love him. In U.S. schools, they ask students in biology class, do you think humans are still evolving? As in the book Holt Biology, the answer will either be, yes, they are still evolving, which is an endorsement of the myth, or no, they stopped evolving, which is also an endorsement of the myth, as it is an admission that they were evolving, but have now stopped. But what if the student doesn't want to acknowledge that humans evolved in the first place? No, such thinking is not allowed. Guess where you'd find such stupid questions? In the Thinking Critically section. This is how free-thinking skills are snatched from students through Darwinian brainwashing. During my PhD program, I met a Pakistani-American brother, Hassan Khan, who was studying at Rice University. Their literature professor chose The Divine Comedy as their book assignment. This book depicts hateful drawings of our prophet, peace and blessings be upon him. The professor also showed her students a video of the entire sexual process between a man and a woman as part of the literature course. Hassan objected and filed a complaint with the university administration. The professor, along with her students, responded that they were exercising the rights and freedoms guaranteed by the U.S. Constitution. Freedom. Freedom for all to mock their creator and his prophets. Freedom to promote all forms of obscenities under the slogan of sexual freedom, even to the extent of distributing condoms at schools. Freedom for deviant sexual behavior. Freedom to teach students that this universe originated by chance and randomness, while there's no freedom to encourage them to think and contemplate how everything in this existence point to a masterful creation with intent and will. But no, we must dry up the sources of intellectual terrorism by eliminating any attempt to raise a generation that might rebel against His Excellency, the myth. This is the slavery of our age, and they consider themselves free. We've talked extensively about the stick, but is there a carrot for those who bow to His Excellency? Of course. Imagine a poetry competition where poets compete to praise His Excellency, the President. The winner gets a $1 million reward, paid from public funds. Some poets would then describe nature using beautiful words and conclude with, "Our sky would never have risen. Our earth would never have flattened. Our universe would never have existed had it not been for you, Your Excellency." His Excellency's name must be shoved in at the end. The same thing happens in the world of scientific research. This is what we saw clearly in the episode. Is the theory of evolution truly beneficial? When major organizations like NASA and NSF offer grants for origin of life research, you'll find that they start with the premise of evolution, as if it's a proven fact. What happened was evolution, undoubtedly, undeniably, no question about it. But what kind of evolution? Who's willing to find the answer and receive a grant? For example, how much was the 2017 grant? $8 million. Of course, researchers will drool over such figures and compete ferociously for the award. Nature announced another grant for more than $8 million. For what? For research on modifications to the theory of evolution. It is a fact. It must be evolution. But what kind of evolution? Well, what if a researcher wanted to disprove the entire myth? Would he receive a dime in grant money? From any research support institution? No, we don't need you. How do people like you even exist? Which university is accommodating you so we can attack it and force it to expel you? I remember in 2001, while studying for my PhD in pharmacology in Houston, I took a course titled Biochemical Pharmacology, which focused on the amazing and beautiful details in the genetic material. During one lecture, I told the professor and students, "I can't imagine what fool can be convinced that all of this happened by chance." The professor was enraged and we had a tense discussion. Then, during the break, he took me aside and said, "Ayad, I can't imagine that you will go back to Jordan and not teach the theory of evolution. If you don't believe in it, you are dangerous to the scientific community. You are dangerous to the scientific community. Those who don't believe in the myth are a danger to the scientific community. This is how the opponents of His Excellency the myth are threatened and repressed. Then after all of this, they tell you about the 99%. We saw together in the episode Science and Homosexuality, how those who criticize homosexuals are criminalized, as is any researcher who attempts to correct abnormal psychological tendencies. We saw the resolutions of organizations like the World Health Organization to fight homophobia, very similar to anti-terrorism resolutions, and how they require educational institutions to enforce the acceptance of homosexuality. We also saw how scientific research, which doesn't support their position, such as that conducted by Dr. Robert Spitzer, is silenced. We saw beyond any reasonable doubt that in the U.S., free and impartial scientific research is nothing but an absurd fantasy, and how science is used as a tool to impose the political agenda of those in power. Given that, why is anyone surprised if there is a similar repudiation of anyone who opposes the evolution myth? After all of this, dear viewers, any discussion about the percentage of scientists supporting the theory of evolution becomes a joke, just like discussing the 99.99% win of His Excellency, the President. In such an atmosphere of terrorism, percentages mean nothing. This is the first point. The second point is that those who regurgitate these percentages, including their Arab parrots, get them from pro-myth websites, and we've seen time and time again, in previous episodes, how the myth disciples don't refrain from lying in order to prop up His Excellency, the myth. Remember their lies about the 99% similarity between the human and chimpanzee genomes in the episode? The claimed 99% Nevertheless, some among us are fascinated by these percentages, continue to repeat them on every occasion, and use them as a justification for nullifying their minds and those of their followers and convincing them of the myth in all its absurdity. So, if the myth disciples say the percentage of professors who believe in evolution is 97% or 99%, we don't believe them. Rather, we tell them, first you need to say that this is the percentage of scientists who show support for the myth out of fear, greed, actual conviction, or as an excuse, no matter how ridiculous, to deny the existence of the Creator. Don't call it the percentage of scientists who support, are convinced of, or believe in the myth. Also, this percentage is a lie. Because despite all the intellectual terrorism practiced, a large number of scientists remain openly opposed to the myth and willingly endure the resulting backlash. Some of these scientists are signatories on the statement, "A Scientific Dissent from Darwinism," which starts with, "We are skeptical of claims for the ability of random mutations and natural selection to account for the complexity of life. Careful examination of the evidence for Darwinian theory should be encouraged." The list of signatories includes many famous researchers, such as James Tour and Philip S. Skell, who are affiliated with well-known universities like Harvard, Rice, Cambridge, and Oxford. They are well established in their field and eclipse other scientists due to their scientific excellence, despite the intellectual terrorism by the myth gang to undermine them. It is a disadvantage for them to be against His Excellency the Myth while applying for jobs. They will not be able to use this to gain positions at universities or earn favors from the myth lobby. However, they overcome this disadvantage through their robust performance and prolific research in their various fields, which benefits scientific institutions from a financial and reputation perspective. By the way, this is a lesson for Muslim students and researchers to devote themselves to their studies and research and excel. This maximizes their chances of attaining prominence and supporting their religion as it becomes difficult to overlook or marginalize them. Add to this the role of the powerful church institution in the U.S., which is divided into proponents and opponents of the Darwinian lobby. The church has its separate budget and influence, which provides a breathing space for the anti-myth academics. So, yes, there are many scientists who openly declare their skepticism of the myth. Accordingly, we tell the Muslim youth who have fallen victim to the myth and who parrot, sadly, if you have a scientific objection to the theory of evolution, why don't you publish your research in a scientific journal? As if they are aware of what has already been published. Despite the lack of impartiality and tyranny of the Darwinian lobby, there are still plenty of publications that reject the theory of evolution and confirm that this universe must have a design and designer. For example, on the website discovery.org, you'll find hundreds of these peer-reviewed papers published in global reputable journals. You'll also find a summary of each of these papers. Those who parrot the myth disciples will feel embarrassed once they read these papers and realize the considerable efforts in this area. There are also dozens of scientific books criticizing the myth, including many authored by PhD holders in their fields. This is all in the Western world, the object of fascination of our youth. I did not even mention the Muslim scholars who have their own scientific output and also reject the myth. By the way, I, myself, and many of my brothers, in our respective fields of expertise, refuse to sign the aforementioned petition issued by the myth opponents, because we are not only skeptical of the claims that random mutations and natural selection can account for the complexity of life, as the petition says, but we're also convinced that this claim is the stupidest and most ridiculous one in history. The conflict is ongoing. The myth disciples, in different countries, monitoring the schools that oppose their myth and teach creation, placing them on the roll of shame, pinpointing their locations to destroy them by inciting attacks against them and enacting laws to shut them down. A full-fledged war indeed. The well-known journal Nature, a patron of the myth, tracks all countries that allow teaching creation and considers this a surrender to creationists. Some non-Muslims have a strong stance in this war, preferring to lose their jobs rather than teach a false myth that contradicts their intellect, knowledge, and religious beliefs. While regrettably, we see Muslim teachers at international schools teaching this nonsensical myth to students in order to keep their jobs. Their love for the true religion is less than the love of these non-Muslims for their distorted religion. In conclusion, in this episode, we've shown how the myth lobby terrorizes the scientific community. When the schools are forced to teach children that the credit goes to His Excellency, the kids are brainwashed from an early age. When those who oppose His Excellency lose their jobs or get sued, and when researchers are bribed through grant money to mention the myth, under such circumstances, any talk about the percentage of His Excellency's supporters becomes ridiculous and worthless. We also showed the invalidity of the claim that those who reject the myth in the scientific community are an insignificant few.
AAAS issued a statement in February 2006 saying that the theory of evolution no longer has any opposition from any significant source.
Or when they trick you into believing that there are no scholarly, detailed, peer-reviewed publications which debunk the myth. Most importantly, dear viewers, the question, how can you reject a theory endorsed by 99% of scientists? This question was posted as an objection to almost every one of my episodes. I've intentionally delayed the response until after I posted 22 episodes with meticulous scientific details, so that you know that we're not parrots or algae living on the margin of science who need to wait and see where the majority might lead us. If you, dear viewers, value and respect your mind, you will follow the evidence instead of the percentage of supporters. We will not conclude, as some unfortunately do, with the percentage of those who support the myth is 97% so. Acceptance of the theory of evolution is directly proportional to a higher academic degree. What am I expected to do then? Believe in evolution so I can attain this high prestige and join the conglomerate of scientists? I postponed my answer so you would see the truth supported by its evidence. After that, regardless of the actual percentage of myth disciples, it will only add to our amazement at how Allah can blind the sight of those who turn away from Him to the point that they can no longer see the rising sun. It does not hurt the sun shining brightly in the sky that those who are blind cannot see its brilliant light. When the truth is crystal clear, its denial by those who oppose it has no value whatsoever, regardless of their academic degrees. For knowing the truth requires a sound heart and a pure soul, not just an intelligent mind. We saw in the episode, The Atheist's God of the Gaps, how these scientists insist on denying creation at any cost to blindly pursue their desires and because of psychological issues. The legacy of a corrupt church and distorted religion. If I respect myself and value my mind, I will not allow those led by their psychological issues to think for me. Indeed, their denial is more evidence for the power of the Creator, who says what is translated as, "Have you seen the one who has taken his own whim as his God, and Allah has misguided him despite his knowledge, and has sealed his hearing and his heart, and placed a veil over his sight? Who will guide him after Allah? Will you not remind yourselves?" That's why I delayed this episode. The percentage of scientists who support or oppose is not evidence for or against. Indeed, appealing to popularity is a well-known logical fallacy, and we leave logical fallacies to those who want others to think for them and those who want to think for others. We just brought up the percentage to tell them that their percentage is false and meaningless. Moreover, after all the facts revealed in the previous episodes, the phrase, "percentage of scientists supporting evolution," is a self-contradiction. Because it refers to the percentage of scientists who support the myth when those who support myths cannot be scientists, as we detailed in the episode. The rightful parent of science, peace and mercy of Allah be upon you,